like a lot of young people are, I was looking for a way to matter. And fire did that really quickly.
And I think what we're talking about is, when does it become you? When does all of a sudden the thing that you're doing become who you are?
This is the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center podcast. I'm Alex Victora, Assistant Center Director of the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center here in sunny Tucson, Arizona. Howdy! It's been a long fire season. 2017 is in the books for the most part for most of us, and we've been away from the podcast for too long. Glad to get back at it this week with a cool topic, and the topic is identity. Why identity, you might ask? Great question. Let's get into it. We've been talking about identity all summer long, it seems like. Identity relates to some of the other things we talk about around here. Culture, belonging, and things like tribes. Us versus them type stuff. All of those concepts relate to decision making. How decisions are made on the fire line is at the heart of so much of what we think about. And who the groups and individuals are that make decisions on the fire line, and how those identities interact, is worthy of discussion, no doubt. Identity is about more than all this stuff, however, and we've been grappling with this. How and why should we talk about identity? Recently, we turned on one of the recording machines down here in Tucson and captured a discussion between two voices. One is familiar, Travis Dotson, our center analyst, resident deep thinker, artist, and the only qualified safety officer on the staff. The other voice is a new guy. Who's the new guy?
The new guy is the old guy's boss.
Wait, now I'm confused.
Yeah, so my name is Brit Rosso. I'm the director of the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center. Been in the job since November 2010. So we're just past the seven-year mark. Been doing this now.
7 years here in Tucson.
Yeah.
And your first Wildland Fire season was?
1984.
1984.
Yep.
Okay, that's a little bit about Collectively, Travis and Britt have a wealth of both wildland fire and general life experience. They bring some great insights to this discussion of identity. Let's listen in now as Travis and Britt talk about identity.
I was looking for a way to matter. And fire did that really quickly. People were proud of me. People congratulated me. I made money. You know, that's a quick way to matter. And feel like, you know, you're growing up or something like that. But looking back on it, there's all these things that were happening that I didn't realize. You know, I was picking people out. Oh man, I want to be like him, or oh man, she's a badass, or you know what I mean? Yeah. I was picking those people out and trying to do things to emulate them. Psychologically and emotionally and all of those things, I was building an identity, which I didn't realize. And that's just a normal thing. That's not a bad thing. Yeah. I guess what I want to talk about is what happens to that as your life and your career goes on, and what are the challenges when your identity is or is not wrapped around what you do, especially fire, and you know the tribal element and how tight knit and all those things that we say are positive things. Like what happens when that gets tested? I guess I don't know. Is your experience similar?
Yeah, I think that so many of us get into the business not trying to make a career of it.
Yeah.
We just end up there somehow, some way, and all of a sudden you get exposed to this thing, this wildland fire thing that you never really knew much about, and all of a sudden you matter. All of a sudden you have a sense of purpose. All of a sudden you're just like this eye-opening. Oh my God, this is it. I can't believe how much this means to me to be part of this team, this tribe, this organization. And then once you, for me, once I felt like this is the deal, this is where I'm heading. And whether you fall in it backwards or go in it with eyes wide open, full speed ahead, all of a sudden you're in it. I think all that kind of just continues to build upon our identity, what somehow became our career. And next thing you know, you look back and you're like, I guess I'm doing this. This is where I'm headed.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say, well, yeah, okay, this is what I'm going to do until I retire, or you know what I mean. It thinks of career, but do you ever wake up and say, oh, this is who I am? This is there ever that? I think there's people cross that threshold and they go, well, yeah, I just got into it to pay for college, but I ended up staying. Like a lot of people have that story, and they do have that realization that I'll make this my career.
Yeah.
Or people have known from day one, like, oh yeah, I can't. I'm headed towards that permanent, and I can't wait. I always talk about all the wasted furloughs. I feel like I wasted a bunch of my furloughs, chasing winter work.
Right.
And because I was an all-in type of person, and what I wanted to be doing was fire stuff, even if that was stacking sticks or, training, signing on to teach all the refreshers or whatever. You know what I mean? Right. That was just who I showed up at the office on my furlough and wanting to check out training videos. So I could take them home and watch them on my own time,
right.
And I think that again, it's telling to that I now feel embarrassed about that. But, I was all in. I wanted the career. I got the permanent full-time job, and I was stoked and all that stuff. But I never quite had have this moment of like, oh man, I'm investing a lot in this. And nobody ever sat me down and said, hey, do you understand the consequences of investing in this?
One of my old bosses used to say, you're one stump hole, knee twist away from not being able to be a hotshot anymore. Yeah, you're right. So what are my options? But it got me thinking a little bit when he kept reminding me of that. I think there's a multitude of different ways you can, physically or literally get smashed. And, physically there's all kinds of mechanisms of injury. We know about the hazards of the job. And then I think the thing that we dance around the edges of and don't talk much about in the service is those, maybe we'll call them mental or emotional injuries that can potentially happen. And that can be things on the home front with a family, friction with a family. You miss all the kids' birthdays, you miss your anniversary, which could create friction at home with your relationship with your family. And then there's no way to draw a bright line and separate that from your day job. How easy is it to not bring our day job stuff home? Right? How good are we at doing that?
Well, I think it's impossible, right? I mean, that's just not realistic.
No. So why would we think we couldn't, that the stuff that happens at home not bleed over into our day job?
And then especially when all the things that we talk about as being a benefit and a draw to this line of work, which is the crew becomes your family.
Mm-hmm.
That you literally spend so much time and it's intimacy. That's not a word that we like to use in this business, but that's actually what it is.
This, I think, again, it's this blender full of stuff that ends up being our identity.
Sure.
And in fire, we have a fire family. We call it that. We call each other brothers and sisters. How do you deal with that? When we're all in, when it's 100% the job, and all of a sudden something really close to us, linked to the job, gets smashed.
Because there's a whole bunch of different ways. I know I've had a few of them, and some of them are great. Some of them are real positive. Sometimes it's just all it is some salty person asking you tough questions.
Yep.
Which is a great way to have it happen.
Yep.
But there's some awful ways to have it happen too.
There are, and we have a multitude of examples of those in our service, in our fire family, and everything from where you don't physically get smashed, but you see someone get smashed, whether that's a friend or a coworker.
Mm-hmm.
And that all of a sudden instant realization that could have been me. I was 10 feet away when Johnny got hit by that branch.
Or that should have been me.
Or that should have been.
Why was it not? All
right.
of that stuff.
Right. And that just, man, that just really can open someone's eyes that is all in, especially that's all in, and their identity is 100% whatever they are, hotshot, jumper, engine, on a module, whatever it is. And so there's that kind of concentric rings out. It's like someone getting physically smashed near you. That has an emotional effect, of course. Hearing about someone else, not physically seeing it, but hearing about crew X or engine company, whatever it is, having a near-miss close call or a hit, those things, something we really don't like to talk about is suicide. And I won't go into that in depth, but when you have either hear about it, a firefighter that took their own life, whether that's while they're still working or after they retired, it really makes you pause and think about why. What we always want to know why. We always are looking for answers as humans. We always wonder, why did that person I didn't know but was a firefighter like me work a whole career, retire, and then take their own life?
Mm-hmm.
It may have nothing to do with their career or fire.
It might not, and it might.
And it might. And we'll never know. And then I think there's the closer to home, a friend. I mean, you and I lost a good friend who took his life after he retired from fire. And we want to know why, and we'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
Was it career? Was it life? Was it both? We'll never know. And that's hard. And that's really hard. It can rock people to their core. And then I think there's the being a leader, whether it's a leader of leaders or a leader of followers, and then having someone that you're responsible for, get physically either injured or killed in the line of duty or off the clock. Having someone getting T-boned, after work, going home. There's many cases of that, and it can be devastating to not just you, but to the module and the people that you lead and to your organization. And I think what we're talking about is, I hate to use the word resiliency, but how do you deal with that? When we're all in, when it's 100% the job, and all of a sudden something really close to us, linked to the job, gets smashed.
Absolutely, and I feel like the options that we're typically presented with, and the way that we talk about resilience, is it's one way. That when people say resilience, they're talking about doubling down.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Being more all in because, to honor somebody or to, you know what I mean? And we talk about, hey, you got to get back up on that horse. And we say that a lot. Or we say, yeah, man, they've never been the same ever since that event, whatever that was. And we say that in a negative way, as if the pre-existing, the way that they were before the event is the ideal. Rather than valuing somebody's new perspective because of whether it was their divorce or the birth of their child, and they don't go on as many assignments, or they
take leave during the summer.
They take leave during the summer. What
is that?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do that.
And if anything is different from that all in, then we sort of kind of devalue it. Rather than that might actually be the true resilience. That is what's going to help that person be able to live with themselves based on their new reality. Because their new reality, you know what I mean? You can't help. That's the way I experience it. That's the new reality. Somebody close to you dies, especially in the line of duty or suicide, whatever it is, as a new reality.
Yep.
Your long-time relationship goes down the tubes and you don't have that support anymore and you feel bad for the part you played in it. Mm-hmm. That's a new reality. Mm-hmm. And how you make sense of that, I feel like, is what gets judged. Right. And if it's anything other than just trying to get back to the way it was. Like, that's the ideal. Like, well, yeah, you just need to get back up on that horse. And they're so risk averse. Now they're risk averse because they're scared of whatever it was.
Rocks, trees, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of how we experience those new realities, how much of that is complicated by how tightly your identity is wrapped around the job.
Yeah.
And I struggle with it because I don't ever want to say that it's a bad thing to be all in, but that's kind of where I drift towards, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, retirement's the other one.
Well, absolutely, and we haven't even talked about that yet. Yeah, I'm closing in on, I'm getting close. I knew that decades ago, but it's decades away back then. And all of a sudden now it's months away. That is, I've seen, at least in my age bracket, I've seen many of my friends and mentors that are older than me. And some of them go out, arms in the air, crossing the New York City Marathon, breaking the banner, busting through, and they just keep going. And you hear from them again as friend, but not fire. They're done.
Yeah.
They're done. They did their career, and it's time for a next chapter in life. They're going to go do something else. And whether they had a plan or not, they're going to do something else.
Yeah.
They'll always be a firefighter.
Sure.
I mean, you can't make that go away. But they choose a different path. Then there's the group, the general group that crosses the line willingly with a smile, and then the next day, the next week, the next pay period, whatever, they're back doing it. They're carrying that identity over that 57 line and still doing it. And that's okay.
They've got a lot to offer, right?
They've got a ton to offer. They've got 20, 30 plus years of experience that they can offer and share with others, however they choose to share that, whether it's a line safety, on an IMT, whatever it is.
A fire department,
working for a different fire department and carrying all that knowledge over to a different agency organization, sure. And then there's maybe the third group, and there's probably a ton of groups. I'm oversimplifying it. But then there's a third group that gets dragged across the line or pushed across the line, maybe is a better way.
Yeah,
right?
It's not even a line, it's a cliff.
It's a cliff. It's a cliff to that group. It's like, I'm not ready. Mm-hmm. Whether that's I haven't accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish, and I don't think you ever can, if you're all in. I'm not financially sound
to
go from 100% pay to whatever diminished rate of pension you're going to be getting. Or that cliff, it looks scary.
I don't know who I am.
Am I still a firefighter when I go past? What happens to my identity when I go up that cliff? When I go across that 57 line, does it go away? I'm always a firefighter, but I don't get to hang with the boys and the girls anymore. I don't get to go to the spring meetings. I don't get to, whatever it is, go to the station, go to the guard station, hang out, whatever it is. I don't know if that's I think part of that is not being prepared and not thinking about it, or just holding back or holding down reality that's coming at you.
Sure. And culturally or organizationally, what do you think the typical accepted views are of those categories? Is there a preferred, or are there the people that we prefer to deal with, and then the people that we kind of look down on?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, part of me wants to say it really depends. It's case specific, but I think there's generalizations we could agree on that. If the group one, we'll call them, that goes across the line and does something else, and we hear from them as friends, but they're out. They're doing something else and they're loving it. And what do we think about them? Is that okay? Is it like, oh, really, just like that?
Yeah, you're going to walk away?
After your birthday, you're just going to walk away from all this.
Yeah.
I think sometimes some people look at that way. And I think if you're all in, if you're in the all-in crowd, I can see how, and I've heard, it's like, oh, I guess they're out.
They turn their back on us.
Yeah. Wait, are you guys in still, or are you out?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that kind of perspective for those that choose to do something else. And then the perspective of those that jump over the 57 line and then they're still all in.
Yeah.
No matter what department, organization, AD, contract, another department, whatever, they're in. How do we look upon them? If you're all in, I think it depends where you stand. From where you stand, if you're all in and you see that, man,
Oh, that's awesome.
that is awesome. They're sharing all that knowledge, experience based with others, and they're still rocking it. That is, I'm down with that.
Yeah, but there's a whole other group of people that will we throw rocks at those people,
Absolutely.
especially if what they're doing is ADing as air attack or safety. You know, the classic is they go out as safety now.
Yeah.
You know, or ops on a team or something like that, and there's a group that looks down upon that and throws rocks at those people, and we say horrible, mean things. You know, like, geez, like, get over it.
Yeah.
You know, go retire, go, and don't take opportunities away from those people, you know, coming up,
Yeah.
you know,
The
that,
younger.
and obviously how you think about and what you say about those instances is all about you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How you're feeling. If you're looking at if it looks like a cliff to you, that obviously is going to frame how you talk about what other people do.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to address is that when you're that person, when you're saying those things about whatever it is you're saying, you're influencing somebody else's path and their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part where I get worried about the rocks that we're throwing at those groups. And that like, those are real struggles. These aren't things to be taken lightly, because as you, like, it's entirely possible, plausible, likely that the loss of identity can lead to all kinds of things.
Yep.
Health problems, addiction problems, suicide, all of that. And for some reason in retirement, because we can see it coming, I feel like we're less compassionate in those instances. We say, like, hey, well, you knew this was coming. You should have done your homework. But when it's mid-career, early career, you know, close to retirement, and it's involuntary, I guess that's kind of the key. It's one thing if somebody says, you know what, I'm going to open a surf business in Nicaragua.
Yep.
I'm out later.
Got my 50 and got my 20 and my 50. I'm gone.
Yeah. Or even before that.
Or even before that.
They say, hey, you know what? This being away from home, all this shit, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go be a air marshal, or, you know, whatever it is you're going to go be. I'm going to go be a guide, a hunting guide.
Yeah.
Work at I'm going to be a mechanic, or all these things that people do. They leave the business all the time after long times, and it's a conscious choice, and we typically are proud of that person.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, depending on whether or not they check in.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or how much of how close they were to retirement,
Right.
You know, and what did they give up? But when they got hit by a tree or whatever else, that's where we're, like, really sympathetic, man. Oh man, they're cut down in their prime,
Right.
and they really still wanted to keep being on the crew, and they can't anymore. You know, they wanted to keep jumping, and that accident,
Their ankle never healed right, or whatever.
and now they can't do it.
The thing they want to do.
I feel like we're sympathetic in that instance.
I don't think they get many rocks thrown at them.
Yeah, exactly. But in retirement, which is the same thing, for some people, an involuntary separation.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us are real comfortable throwing rocks at them. And and again, it matters how much of your identity is wrapped up, because, man, when people are all in, that's how we get crews to do amazing things.
Yep.
That's how we, you know, like, it doesn't make sense that we have people that will miss anniversaries and will miss birthday. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, how is it that to go do ridiculous, crazy, hard stuff?
Yeah.
Obviously it makes sense somehow, because it happens. And there's great rewards. But there's also a bunch of danger there. And I don't know. Every time I try and figure this out and diagram it, I can't.
Yeah. Because, we're living it. I mean, we're part of the deal, and we're heading, on some sort of path towards, whether it's a cliff or that 57 line we're going to cross, whatever it is eventually.
Or some unknown
smash. The identity thing, I sit here and I look back and I could think of a highly respected hotshot soup in SoCal. I really looked up to, and he hit mandatory in the mid 90s. 20 years as superintendent, started a brand new crew. 20 years as soup, ran that crew until they kicked him, until he, see my language.
There you go.
Right? My language is until they kicked him out.
Yeah.
Well, he knew when he turned 57, he was going out. But from my perspective, sometimes I look at it like we have a name for it. It's called the 57 Golden Boot.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so he got the boot, did a little tiny AD work, and passed away within less than 2 years. Not by getting smashed, just, it was a heart attack. His identity, he was Superintendent 5. He was known as whatever it is. That was him. That was his identity. And so I struggle too, is this, I don't think being all in is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. We want people to be all in.
Yeah, are you going to throw rocks at that and say, oh yeah, you should have done that differently? See, because the harsh thing to say would be, what a waste.
Right.
And that's not, like, there's no way that's you know what I mean?
Waste.
That's a life filled with meaning, or, you know what I mean? And I know we tend to put on rose-colored glasses and to look, you know what I mean? Obviously, it's not without hardship.
Yeah.
But that's not an option. There's not life without hardship just isn't an option.
Right. It's part of the deal.
But I feel like that sometimes that perspective is taken, that if you're wrapped too tightly, or there is such a thing as being wrapped too tightly or being too all in. And that there's danger in the job being who you are rather than what you do. Or, I mean, even that dichotomy, that's not real. But we make it that way.
Yeah.
You either are the job or you aren't, as if there's no balance.
It's not that simple, and it's not that black and white. I think maybe what we're talking about, the potential dangers is when you're all in all the time.
Yeah.
And day, night, furlough time. Maybe that's what we're getting at. I know we're not looking for the answer, but when you're all in all the time, I was.
Yeah.
For a long time. You talked about it, right? Yeah. Now, being all in all the time and going on your furlough time to go check out training videos and looking back on it kind of going and cringing a little bit, well, maybe that helped you get to where you are today by being all in all the time back then.
Yeah, and maybe it helped instigate some of the pain of, divorce, or, you know what I mean? There's just, it got me to where I am, and that's not a bad thing, but there's also some hard things in there that if I were to mentor somebody else, I do feel like if I had myself to talk to, I would say, no, go surfing, which I tried to do later on once I kind of got that perspective.
But how did you get that perspective?
I had that reflected to me by a salty jumper that, asked me some pretty point blank questions. He was just trying to get to know me, and then, in the process, I had to answer the question, which is, what kind of guy are you? What, are you bait and bullets guy or fun in the sun guy? As if those were the only two options. I mean, it's pretty typical. Yeah. Do you travel in the winter or chase bluebird days on the slopes?
Right.
Or are you out tracking deer and
hooking fish?
Yeah, exactly. Those are pretty typical personas you know, and then, or there's the fire person, the person that doesn't do either of those things,
Right.
and chases the work, or goes to Florida to burn all winter or whatever,
Right.
Right.
Do we throw rocks at those people, or do we encourage that?
Yeah.
And is that okay?
Yeah, and is there a problem or a consequence? And in my instance, I had to look at that, and because the culture I was entering at the time really valued diverse interests or experiences. You know what I mean? I wanted to be part of that club, and people were coming back talking about their travels and their or the big animal that they missed. And so I did, and I looked back at my life at the time, and I switched it around. I started explore all the interests that I had outside of fire, which was a lot. I had a life before fire. It's funny. I told myself I was I was fighting fire to save money to go to art school. That was my story. I never made it to art school, obviously. Yeah. But the reason I wanted to go to art school is because, I was into painting and drawing and sculpture and, writing, all of that stuff. That was kind of, and that's not something that had a whole lot of value when you get into the world of chainsaws and drip torches. Yeah. And so I dropped all that stuff until it just happened to be reflected back to me. Oh yeah, you're just into fire, and it was kind of condescending, kind of like. And I had to do some self-evaluation, and I changed my course a little bit. But
that's interesting how you say you drop that stuff, because I think maybe that's what we do. We have all this stuff we do, which is our identity pre-fire.
Yeah.
And we're just talking about fire here, but it could be anything that you go all in on. And then when you get in a fire, and then all of a sudden you're like, you have this awakening, like, this is it. This is the deal. This is what I want to do. I'm going all in on this deal. And maybe it's conscious, maybe it's subconscious, but all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're all in. And subconsciously or unconsciously, you start dropping other things. Mm-hmm. Because you can't be all in here and have all these other things and be all in over here. Or can you? I don't know. Whether it's at the beginning, like we've talked about, you haven't talked too much about the middle, a little bit. Kind of the middle's when you're all in, you're into it, and then all of a sudden you get smashed. I think that's what we've talked a little bit about.
Yeah, and I think some of those different mirrors get held up. But yeah. I think there's an opportunity for shifting in there. That's where people become parents, or get married, or get divorced, or have those tragic instances. And it's not strictly the middle, it's just somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It can happen and how you handle those things, and how, whether or not you're going to change your path at that point. It just has to do with your experience to that point, and who you are. And that's what I'm saying is, like, what's our responsibility in talking about this stuff with people that are early on, mm-hmm. or halfway through? What is your responsibility when you see people investing? If you're the one in the office because you're the captain, or the FMO or whatever, and you're there all winter because that's the job, and you see the young Travis coming in to check out videos. What's your role there? Mm-hmm. And that's the one I don't know the answer to.
Yeah. Because
I know what I would say to myself.
With hindsight.
Yeah, with the benefit of hindsight.
Yes.
But I don't. Because there is that potential to have it get so wrapped up in self-worth. I think that's the danger. If doing this job is where you get your value, a big piece of what you think makes you matter in the world. I just feel like that's dangerous, and I think there's ways to invest in other things. We always say diversify your investments. Don't have everything in
C or G or F. Or,
yeah.
Don't put it all 100% in the stock or bonds or whatever.
And that's the thing that I feel like it's okay to warn people about, the danger of not diversifying some of your identity, you know what I mean? And there's so many ways to do that. I don't know how to get young people to listen to that, because a lot of people just do it naturally.
Yeah.
They have all kinds of different interests, you know what I mean? They go help build houses in Rwanda, or you know what I mean, and they've got some other aspects, or people are have faith or spirituality, or they're invested in the ranch that they grew up on, and you know what I mean, or you know what I mean, and that's great. We should support that. That's one thing, is when people have it, support it.
Right. Don't throw rocks at them for doing that.
Yeah, and don't try and take it away. Don't say, you need to be more loyal to the agency or the crew or whatever.
Right.
The part that I struggle with is when you see somebody that you feel like, has all their identity eggs in the fire basket.
Right.
What does that conversation look like?
That's the tough part.
I don't.
Without suppressing their engagement and being all in, you can still be all in and diversify.
Yes, I guess that's a good message.
Maybe that's the message. Maybe that's part of it. Man, I love that you come in and check training videos out in the winter. I love that you sharpen the saw on your lunch break. I love that you're filling the SIGs after work. All these things are wonderful things, but it would be beneficial for you currently and in the future if you diversify a little bit more in your identity, in your life, and who you are. Whether that's, I see you got a Jeep, you love four-wheeling, blah blah blah,
and I think that's what I'm saying is, maybe can we shift what all in means? Is the way to be resilient. If you really want to be all in, diversify.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do some other things, because to be all in, to be resilient, to be the best and contribute the most, we need you to actually diversify, take breaks, turn in. It's the same thing as like a hot day, right? For the crew to keep digging, you have to take regular breaks, more than you normally would. Because it doesn't do anybody any good if you go balls to the wall for 2 hours and then
now you are taking a big break.
Yeah, now you're contributing nothing.
Now you're actually taking stuff from the crew because we got to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that same concept, I feel like, is applicable on a grand scale. You know what I mean? If you're all in all the time, you're actually a liability.
So are we saying? I think what we're saying is, where we're getting to here is diversify your identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's okay to be, all in and have the stickers on your truck and rock the hat and rock the crew colors and all that stuff. Encourage that. That's wonderful if that's who you are, if that's your identity. But diversify it. Don't just be that all the time, because there are things we have control of and things we have no control of in life. And one of these many things we talk about, getting smashed, we have no control over. Mm-hmm. It's how resilient we are and how we react to those physical and emotional times when we get smashed. Because you will. We're human. You stay in this business, it may not be work related, but you're going to get smashed eventually, physically or emotionally. And if your identity is not diversified, and if that smash is all about the job, and that's who you are, then that can be devastating.
Absolutely.
It can take down the best of us.
Exactly. And I think the consequences of that we we're only starting to really delve into. I think that, and obviously none of this stuff is, directly cause and effect, black and white or anything like that.
Nope.
But some of the things are addiction, suicide, just mental, emotional health in general, depression.
Yep.
These are all these things that actually require vulnerability to deal with. And that's not something we teach, that's not really something that's part of.
That's not a valued trait.
No, but it's you can't get around those other things without confronting that.
Yeah.
And diversifying your identity, I think, gives you multiple approaches.
Yeah.
And not diversifying, it's not a cause and effect thing, but sometimes trying to deal with that, especially if there's a time at those times when we get smashed emotionally, physically, and you can't stay long in this business without having that proximity. You know what I mean? If you were in the business in 2013, you had some sort of emotional reaction to Yarnell.
Yep.
If you were in the business in 94, you know what I mean? And that happens every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of scale.
Right.
And we're, I don't want to say coping with it. We're existing through that stuff.
Yeah.
And whether or not, how you exist, whether or not you cope, I guess, is at least a little bit tied to how diverse your identity is.
Yeah, that's right on. I think if you're, I'm a case example of someone that's been all in all the time, and you start dropping those other things off that were part of your identity when you start feeling like you do this for free because you love the job so much, and it's so important to you, and it becomes such a part of you, and your identity is your crew colors and your hat and the GAC you work in and the crews you work around, all that stuff, the module flavor you pick, wherever that might be, and then you do get smashed. I got smashed at 21 years into the game, and when one of my hotshots was killed in the line of duty, but I was that guy that was all in, completely all in when that happened. Fortunately, it was towards the end of the season. Not that you ever get to pick when you get smashed.
Yeah.
But getting through that, and then once your identity, which is your crew, which is your people, and once they go away for the winter, whatever it is, and then it's just you and your identity has been smashed, that is a dangerous path, and that some people recover from, and if you're not diversified, some may not. And I spent a few months in a really bad place and getting worse every day, and it took some friends to help me without overstepping their bounds, without grabbing me by the collar, but to finally get me to go do something else for a while and stop working, because that's all I knew was work. So I just worked more, and by doing that other thing, by hanging out in a different country, with warm weather and cold drinks for a few weeks, and not think about work and any of that, not to make believe it didn't happen, but just to do something else. And that, I look back on that now, and that was like this first opening step to diversify my identity. But I had to get smashed to do it. And it was brutal. But from that point forward, I wasn't just the all in all the time hotshot guy. I was able to diversify my identity, is what we're talking about. I took time off I didn't take time off in the summer. I
didn't go that far.
No, I couldn't do that. But I did take time off on the shoulder seasons where I didn't do that before. Sure. No, we got to hire. No, we got to close out. No, we got to open up the station. So I took some more time off in the shoulder seasons, and have continued on that path today to try and diversify my identity. I love being a hotshot, even to this day. Even after going through what I went through, I love being part of this community. But I'm a case example of when you're all in all the time, and that's all you are and who you are, and you get smashed. 100 different ways to get smashed, but when you get smashed, man, that is a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
And I think as a community, as a fire service, we're getting better at trying to help people. That's why we're talking here today.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's why we're talking about
And
this.
we don't know, you know what I mean? In 5 years, we could look back at this and go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that we were saying that stuff."
Pull that off the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my, get rid of that. Get rid of it. We were so ignorant, you know. But that's okay because it's the beginning, and
we're trying to stimulate thought and conversation about this. I mean, here we are at the Lessons Learned Center, and we're struggling with this.
Yeah,
we don't have the answers.
No.
You know, we're trying to write an issue of Two More Chains about this, and we thought we'd just get together and talk about it. And you know, I look at there's some agencies out there right now that are building programs, train the trainer programs called emotional first aid.
Yeah.
What is that? 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't even, the word emotion in our vocabulary wasn't even used, you know, in the fire culture. So we're trending in a better direction. We're not there. We've got a long ways to go. We're really in this infancy of sense making of how do we physically and emotionally and mentally become more resilient and still be all in.
Well, for me, it comes down to, at least right now, diversify your identity and don't throw rocks.
I think those are two things we can write down and try and follow. Those are two great things to do.
Well, what do you think of that? There's a lot there, huh? Do you have any other thoughts on identity, why it matters? If so, let us know. Go to wildfirelessons.net, hit the Contact Us button. There you'll find our phone numbers and email addresses. Also, you can get us on Facebook and Twitter. And we're still waiting for our very first postcard from a listener. 3265 East Universal Way, Tucson, Arizona, 85756. Send us a postcard with your thoughts. For more on the topic of identity, be sure to check out the fall 2017 issue of Two More Chains. In this issue, we do a remarkable interview with Wally Ochoa, a sawyer from the Wainema Interagency Hotshot Crew, who was critically injured in the fall of 2014 on the Freeze-Out Ridge Fire. As you'll see, Wally's story is about much more than his accident. It's about identity and who he was before and who he's become since. Wally's perspective adds another layer to this complex conversation of what identity is and why it matters and why we should all be thinking about it. Finally, and as always, thanks a ton for your time. Recently, I gave Travis a ring to see what he was up to for the holidays.
Hey.
Hey man, what are your plans for the holidays?
I'm going to open a surf business in Nicaragua. I'm out. Later.
I knew it! It's all that surf music we've been playing.